I always say this. I'm always like, make it weirder. Is this chord okay to go to? Like, is that too, like, not, is that weird? Is it unexpected? Because I don't want it to sound like I, yesterday I said, make it sound like it's a 12-year-old orchestra band who is not good, but make it cool and like distort it. And like, I think there's a lot of fun when you let go of the rules. In the same vein, you got to be in the room with someone who understands how things work too. So my name is Trace. I am a writer, singer, artist. I live in Los Angeles. I'm a Gemini, a very stable one. I'm grateful to do what I get to do.
Welcome to The Vietnamese. I'm your host, Kenneth Nguyen. Being part of a culture of nearly 100 million Vietnamese people in the world today comes with a lot of pain, proud history, and privilege. Join me as I highlight and explore the Vietnamese experience from all over the world.
Today we have Trace on. She's an indie musician, singer-songwriter based here in LA. She has music that I am very into. Reminds me of the early music that I grew up with, Mazzy Star and Cocteau Twins. And Trace has a very interesting story, both inside the Vietnamese American community as well as being an American artist. And so thank you for coming on today, Trace.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
What does it mean to be Vietnamese to you?
That is a very intense question, in that to be asked that, I don't take that lightly anymore, because I grew up obviously, American, but I recently kind of understood the gravity of looking the way I do and coming from where I do come from. As Asian Americans, we're just trying to assimilate and grow and survive. So that question you ask me, I think it feels like an honor. It feels like an appropriate amount of responsibility to be a Vietnamese American artist, and what it means to just like do it justice, to do it well, to make my mom proud, to be like, I'm Vietnamese and I get to do music as a Vietnamese woman, and just to be very not cautious, but very tender with like the story that I say and tell.
So did you grow up around a lot of music?
Yeah, so my mom is Carole Kim, and she's a famous pop icon. And I laugh because I just forget that's not normal. And so I grew up it being very normal. It's why it took me 2.5 decades to do music, because I was like, this is not cool. Like, why would I, like, that's cute. And we're also just trying to resist doing what our parents do.
Yeah.
So joke's on me. And so, yeah, I grew up in the nightclub. She was a great mom, but I wasn't like out partying or anything. But I grew up going to rehearsals, and just like the bass grew me up, and I would just eat, cherries out of jars. And I was like a mini adult, because I've always been like a good kid, and I just enjoyed being around my mom and seeing what she did. So I was around that, but it wasn't a household where I didn't sing when I was younger, and my mom didn't sing me to sleep or anything. Like, it wasn't very like that. But I think going to like see my mom play or sing and rehearse was like a big part of my life, and just being around her singer friends, like the entertainment industry, I was very immersed in as a young kid.
I don't want to stay too long on your mother, but
Sure.
it is a very, I have a lot of questions because I did grow up and I've seen her perform in my life, at the Majestic or a Diamond or the Ritz, all these
Ritz, yeah.
All these places that were around when I was a young person. How does, you go from sort of that pop music from Vietnamese America or Vietnamese diaspora or pre-75 Saigon rock, evolve into somebody with your taste and your sounds?
Yeah, I have a lot to say on this, so you'll have to just like corral me. But my mom makes a joke that I love, and she said it once at her show, and it was really funny. She said, I'm really hot and Trace is really cool. And I'm like, Mom, what do you mean? And my mom has always been very, very proud of me and very curious of how I came out the way I did, because she is disco, rock and roll, sexy. Like I'm sexy in my own way, but it's, you know, she's very like, let's go. And my music's sad and slow, and she's always like, why are you so sad? And I'm like, well, how much time do you got? And I would say the generation, you know, but I think she was trying to sing her way out of a war. And I am able to just sulk and be sad in America. You know, there is a privilege. If we wanted to go deeper with that ethos, I think like I'm able to sing sad songs. My mom was like, no, people wanted to dance. People didn't need to be more sad. And I find that really beautiful. And I find that the lore of music, of getting to literally heal, you know, an entity of people. And so I respect her genre. Obviously, I grew up my whole life, my mom saying, you could be a famous Vietnamese singer if you want. She's like, I can do that for you. And I'm like, I know. Like, you can be a poppy Vietnamese girl just dancing her booty off, which is cool. Like, I love, to each his own. That never was me. And my mom always respected that. And so I think even growing up and wanting to do music later, or, you know, my mom actually knew I could sing before I did. And she would tell her friends like, oh, this is, you know, she's a really good singer, but she's going to sing one day for the Americans. And she would say it like in Vietnamese, you know, like, it's just like the funniest thing hearing her say, like, she'll sing for the Americans. And so I think that, yeah, I think the space that I got to grow up in, the influence that I had, I didn't listen to Vietnamese music. So I was like an emo girl, and I'm an indie girl, and like a Mazzy Star girl. So Alanis Morissette, you know, and so I kind of had different influences, but I do love what she does. And I'm curious of what that could look like in the future, of like merging genres and just kind of getting back into like a sweaty disco vibe. Like, I'm here for it. But yeah, I think that's the biggest shift in our different roles as musicians and artists.
Damn, we got to circle back to this singing for the Americans. I can't get that out of my mind.
Yeah.
Now, when you are existing in your world today, do you feel like you're singing for the Americans, or do you feel that you're American?
Good question. Whew. I really do feel like I'm singing for, like, obviously everyone who feels other, but definitely I feel like I'm just singing for all my Asian American girlies or Asian girlies. I do feel like the most honored by these young women that I see at my shows, and they're always like, where are you from? Like, what's your background? And I'm like, I'm Vietnamese and Malaysian. And they're like, oh my gosh, we are too. And I'm like, oh my gosh, cute. And then I'll cry in the green room after. So I do feel like I really want people who feel like they look like me to feel like they are hot and they deserve to be heard, and that they are stunning, and that they are someone. And, you know, it's wild to grow up very differently than most Asian people, right? So like, I grew up with my mom as an artist. So she's like, what's law school? Like, I don't care, you know? And I'm like, I kind of wish in some ways I was forced to play the piano or forced to go to, like, not really, but obviously I'm grateful for how I was raised. Yeah. But I feel very alone in some ways too. And so but I do meet a lot of young people who are like, oh, what you do is so cool. I'm like an accountant, and I'm like, thank you for doing that. I could never do that. Like, that's cool. I'm here for you, girl. But I do think I'm singing for people who specifically look like me, because I obviously feel like no one looks like me, and I'm still a little lost on my end, because I'm still trying to see, like, you know, what musicians do I look up to, or like outside of my mom, of course. And like, even in the TV and film industry that I'm kind of getting into, like, I'm looking around and I'm like, I don't know, like there's a lack of representation, of course. And so I'm really grateful and hopeful to get to be a part of that, maybe for someone younger, in the younger generations. So,
well, I can tell you, going back to you saying you're singing for girls that look like you and, you know, probably have your sensibility. But I can also say, though, and you're probably surprised to hear this, that there are guys in their late 40s, Vietnamese American guys, that I know that would be into your music because they're into Mazzy Star, Alanis Morissette. They're into, I mean, these are real people. My brother, I have business partners that are into, and I tell them about your music. They're like, holy shit. And they hear how, you know, authentic and how honest you are. And I think that goes a long way as well with connecting with people that you think might not be your audience. But how do you get, I don't know, I read in the tens of millions download if it's just girls that look like you or feel like you. There's got to be guys like me and my brother and my business partners that are into your kind of music, right? It's just authentic, and words can go many different ways. We hear it, and when I hear your lyrics, I'm like, oh, I can identify with this, right? Yeah. It's not, I'm not like, we've met before. I'm not like, I don't look anything like probably like the Asian girls that show up to your shows, but I enjoy it very much. And we just want to let you know that there's a lot of us that eventually will get to hear the music and the work that you do.
That means a lot to me. And I think ultimately I do feel like I'm singing for anyone who feels really anything or who might be hesitant to feel, I think, a sadness. There's something, I think it takes a healthy person to be sad. And so I'm very about not glamorizing sadness. I just hold weight very well. So I do want to be some sort of vessel where you kind of feel relief, because I'm just like, it's pretty hard out there, but I'm the most like faith-filled, joy-filled person for such a sad songwriter. And it's part of the release and the beauty in that. So if anyone connects, which I've felt the connection with, definitely I've connected with like gay Latino men, and I'm like, oh, beautiful. Like, yeah. And I'm not Latino or man, but like, just feeling very like, okay, cool. Like people just want to feel something. And if I can be a conduit to corral your emotions into a safe place, like I'm here for it.
Yeah. And I'm just going to plug it right now. 3 songs that I really like. So this is the beginning of the show, so people can stop what they're doing, listen to these 3 songs. My favorite is Suddenly Emotions Fall. The second one is Honey, and then the third one is Low. So if anybody is out there listening, stop listening to us right now and play it, and you'll hear what I've been feeling in the last few days. So yeah, it's just beautiful music. So you said you didn't have basically any formal music training?
No.
That's crazy.
I wish. I like get so jealous of people who know theory, and like I'm a horrible guitar player. I can get by. I'm like a worse piano player. I'm a writer. I feel strong as a writer. I'm an okay singer, like whatever. Like I like to write. So I kind of envy, well, that's why you work with people that are brilliant, and I love working with people who are good at what they do. And so it's been a fun process because I'm not very precious. Like my ear is good, but I'm not like, man, I know some perfectionists out there that I'm like, wow, it can get in the way of getting things done.
Yeah, because I listen to the music and I listen to the complexity of your music. There is okay, we're not talking about Carole Kim's music with just basic chord progressions and standard keys. This is not what we're listening to. We're listening to very complex things with, dissonant chords, with, just a lot of things that are going on that are not typical of like Vietnamese pop music. Yeah. That I've always felt like needs to have somebody who understands music at a very high level, but you're like, no, I don't even know theory. I don't even, and I bring this up because when I was coming up in music, I just always had thought, because I never finished my music journey, but I always thought that in order to write music the way that I hear you playing it, I thought you have to know so much about music. But now I'm learning today that you collaborate with musicians who are into this perfection, you said, right?
Yeah, and it's also like language, because, big words gal, but I've said this a lot in the studio with people, but like, I'm like, I don't know what I like want, but I know what I don't want. And I think it comes with just understanding how to speak the language that you have to make up. Like yesterday was the most funny situation because I work with a collaborator often, so he knows my language. And I will say things like, okay, it feels like the brass is like breathing too much, and I want you to like bring it in. And he'll be like, beep, beep, bop, boop. And I'm like, sick. I could learn production. I have Ableton on my computer. I have
Mhm.
Logic. Like I might be good at it if I really took some time. I'm kind of like, I got enough stuff to do. I got to do other things, you know? So I like understanding enough for the meantime, but I think for me, it's more just like, yeah, like understanding language and listening to a lot of music too, and being influenced by the sounds that you like and don't like. And I appreciate you saying that about the songs that I've done, because I always say this. I'm always like, make it weirder. Is this chord okay to go to? Like, is that true? Like, not, is that weird? Is it unexpected? Because I don't want it to sound like I, yesterday I said, make it sound like it's a 12-year-old orchestra band who is not good, but make it cool and like distort it. And like, you know, I think there's a lot of fun when you let go of the rules. In the same vein, you know, you got to be in the room with someone who understands how things work too. So there's give and take, but
Shit, that description says a lot. You know, 12-year-old. I'm not saying that particular description, but that method of describing a certain feel for a section of the music is huge, because that sort of transcendency, or what am I looking for? That sort of ability to kind of transcend what your, or even just to translate what you're thinking and hearing in your brain to somebody else's hands to do the Ableton or the Logic, is a massive tool, right? It goes beyond even songwriting.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, because if you can't describe that, what you just said, and it makes sense to me, because when you describe it, I can imagine myself being an engineer and going, okay, I think I understand what this means, you know, or if the brass is too windy, you said too airy or whatever, I think I can understand that clarity coming out from a creator's brain. You know, I want to go back to your mom real quick. You were going to different clubs and you're going to different events that she's performing at. What kind of things did you see that do you think that kind of influenced and shaped your worldview?
Yeah, I am in therapy, so that's great. So I'm trying to remember a lot of things. I don't remember a lot from my childhood, but I will say what has influenced me is truly how my mom is with people. I think that I have the confidence from her because she is just literally so confident in what she looks like, how she sounds, and it's not easy. If anyone who knows my mom, and what she looks like at least, and what she sounds like, she doesn't look Vietnamese. She's mostly Malaysian. She's Malaysian and Vietnamese. So her family is, her dad's so dark, her mom's very light. She just looks like, you know, like the Vietnamese word is like lai, like kind of like half, like what are you? Like they're like, what is she? And so people don't think I'm Vietnamese either. And I'm like a Hawaiian or something, I don't know. But so seeing my mom kind of operate in the world in feeling very like an outsider in a very potent community as a very potent musical influence, I feel that she's always just been herself. And the way that she treats people is really like beautiful. And she's the most generous person I know. So I think she shaped this glitzy life to be very, I think, manageable. I think it's hard. And I've learned more now that she's like, this is a very hard industry. And we've had hard talks now that I'm doing this. And she's like, I know it's really hard. And like to tears, to where she's like, I know it's hard, but like, you got this and you're going to last forever. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like for a woman who's been singing for over 50 years, like she finally gets what I'm doing, because she's kind of like, why are you sad? You know, like, and she thinks it's really cool that I write my songs, because she's like, how do you write songs? And I'm like, I have giftings from my mom somewhere. She doesn't write much, but you know, I don't have my mom's voice. Like I'm always like, how do you sing for like 2 hours? I don't get it. I get like tired after 2 songs, you know? So, but yeah, I think her ethos and the way she operated in the nightlife scene, I just felt I always felt safe. And I keep saying that word, but I felt very like, it was like a family. Like we're all just a part of a family trying to like entertain people. And when you are in the limelight, like my mom is, it makes me want to be, I'm like, I want to be famous. I'm down. I can do it. My mom does a great job. And obviously it's different to be like American famous, but I do feel like there's a soul that my mom has that I hope that I have that can handle like that. life.
I think it's passion that really drives us, right? That curiosity to see where we can take things that really kind of transform where we go. Now, with the writing and the actual putting the writing onto music, how did that turn your life? How did it go from writing a lot to infusing music into it?
My first EP was in 2015, and I wrote it in like 2013 or 12. And I wrote all these songs on a guitar. And I remember just having these songs, and I'm just like, I don't want to be a guitar girl in a coffee shop. No offense to any of that. I just was like, I don't want to be that artist.
You don't want to be Jewel.
I don't. And man, she is successful, and I'm like, respect to her, but not my vibe. And I might return to it, to be honest. But it was the stage of just wanting to like move and groove a bit.
Yeah.
And so I was working as an editor in LA at that time, and I collaborated on a song, my first song, with a guy who was like, hey, do you want to sing the song that you showed me one time in college? And I was like, you remember that? I sang that song on his EP as like a fun, cute project. And I was like, sure. And I went to a studio, and it was so fun. I never sang into a mic. And I was like, here we go. I didn't know what mixing was. I didn't know what anything was. And then it came out, and I was like, it sounded okay. It just didn't sound like me, whatever that was. And so that really pushed. I'm driven by authenticity. Like, and that sounds inauthentic to say that, but the only thing that matters to me is sincerity. Perfection's boring, like cool, like that's whatever. I just need it to be moi. And so I heard it. I was like, nope. And I was like at a lunch with a friend, and she was just like, do your own stuff. And I was like, what do you mean? I have a full-time job. I'm working like 70 hours a day. I can't do that. And then I just thought about it, and I was like, I do have some songs. Basically, long story long, I took my like 5 cutie songs, and I ran into a friend who I went to school with, and he's a producer. And he was like, I'm moving to LA for like a little bit. I would love to help you. And I was like, what? And the timing was perfect. I did a Kickstarter. I basically gave him my songs, and I played them to him like on my guitar. And I was like, make this Sylvanesso and Feist and like cool. I just want to dance and be sad. And he did a really good job. If you've listened to the EP, it's like, it's very electronic. And that was my like splash into the industry. But I would say how I started writing from like not music to music was a passionate disdain for how I was being represented musically. I was like, this isn't me. I'm just going to get this out of the way and show people like what I sound like. And then that blew up. And I'm like, that's hilarious. And so I quit my job and did music.
You know, how does that change your life?
I remember just being at a diner when Heavy Shoulders, my first single, came out. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm on the internet. Like it's Spotify, and there's my face, and I got like a cool photo shoot. And I was just like, okay, this is cool. I mean, it changed my life because it literally was obvious. Like Spotify put me on the indie playlist cover. Like my face is on it. And I was just like, what? Like, and I got a manager, like a girl found me through an event, and she was like, I don't do management, but I would love to manage you. Like I'm an art major, but I love your story. And I just like loved seeing how you were or whatever at this thing I was at. And I was just like, cool. Like we don't get anywhere without relationships. And I'm learning that I'm good at them. And I'm really grateful for them. And I don't forget a good one, and I don't forget a bad one. And there's a lot of things in me that feels very, still like I have my days. I'm on a tangent now, but like I don't feel good enough, or like I don't feel cool enough. And my career has changed a lot since then. But like in the beginning, it was real nice. Like I was indie in the beginning, and I paid for my rent for like a year, and I was able to get on all the playlists, and it really did change my life because it was such a specific year at Spotify. If younger artists now ask, which they have, like DM me like, what are your thoughts? How should I do this? I'm like, I don't know, get a TikTok. It's not the same anymore. Success looks so differently now in the industry. And like, I don't know what it's going to take for your life to change. For me, it was literally my tangible thing is like to be on a Spotify cover and to be on playlists, and then to get ultimately signed. I got signed to Sony like a year later.
How do you view being signed versus being completely independent? Like,
yeah, I think that I understand people's desires to be signed. I think for me, I wanted to be on the radio. I wanted to win a Grammy. and you need to be signed, like that's just, it's like the actual only way. It's politically just like, that's how it is. And I'm like, I love a game. I can play a game. I think that being indie for the first part was really good. And it took me a while to sign. It was Ultra through Sony, and they signed, the sub label signed my single Low. And so till this day, Low has the most plays, which is really cool. And it says a lot. They put a lot of work into it. And also it's, it did really well. And so when I finally decided to sign, the motivation was a combination of, it's nice to know that you have a certain amount of money coming in. And I think for me, being older and having a good lawyer and a good team, I was able to sign a very good deal. It was like, I can't like obviously like publicize it, but it was a very like good deal, and people don't hear about that deal a lot. And so
you never hear. You never hear that.
No.
People are always like, oh, we got screwed, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. I finished my record deal in 2 years, and I'm fine. And I would say that for me, it's interesting because I would say this to them. There's nothing bad about them, because the people that I worked with at Ultra were awesome. And the perks are awesome. You can work in their studio in Hollywood, like no matter, like no charge, like you can, it's fun. And they put you in rooms. And granted, I was in a lot of rooms where I'm like, why am I in this room? But I also think a combination of this specific relationship was, they didn't really know what to do with me, because I am not a dance artist. So if I'm working with a DJ, it's because they're my friend and I respect them and I like them. I'm on my friend Chris Manila Killa's album because I love his stuff and I respect him. That's not the type of music I do, right? And so I think Ultra didn't know what to do with me, because ultimately I wanted to be on like KCRW's Tiny Desk concert, And so they're like, okay, cute, but like, do you know Kygo? I'm like, yeah. So I think for me, we took a chance on each other, because I think I was their first artist who was a writer. And so we tried it out. And I will say, Ken, that my career was like this as indie, and Spotify loved me. And then when I signed, it was like this, like plateaued. So it was like rocketing into the sky in the beginning, and then plateaued when I signed. My numbers didn't really change. And I want to kind of say, did it drop? Maybe. And I'm just kind of like, wow, that's so interesting. I was expecting like to pop off, and I signed around the same time as Sophie Tucker, which was a good example of like, okay, like, and they signed with Ultra, and I was like, they're doing great, but their music is different than mine. And that means a lot, because people, anyway, being signed was like fine. I have temptations now because I'm back to being indie, and I love creative control, and I had some with Ultra, which was good. That was like a big part of my like agreement. It was like, I will not be creating artwork that does not feel like me. And so being indie, there's a freedom that you don't have with labels, because I can release a song tonight. I can record a song on my phone and post it up on my voice notes and make it a demo, and that'll be great. So I think for me, being indie now has been scary though, because post-COVID music looks even more different, and it's quite hard to survive as an indie artist 100%, unless you're signing a pub deal or a sync deal, or you have a famous rich parent that's, not like a Vietnamese pop star, because that's different. That's, I could say I'm not a child of a rich person, like it's so different than like, I have other artists in my head who I'm like, they're going on tour because their dad does movies, but yeah, I think being indie now is really tough. And I will say, I recently met an angel investor, and he is Chinese American, and he's investing in my career. And we're doing this new thing where he really wants to be a part of like the narrative that I'm about, which is like, it's just not it feels like a fake dream. And I'm grateful for this man in my life, because he's like, I want your fans to know that you're going to always be able to do music, because the world of being signed and the world of not being signed really screws your head up. Because I have wanted to quit every day for the last year. Like, why am I doing this? I have a degree. I can get a job. I can get a salary. It costs a lot to be an artist, especially a solo artist. When you get asked to play a show, you're like, oh, amazing. And they're like, can you do a full set with a full band? I'm like, yeah. is there money? I have to pay people. I have to pay people. I don't really mind if I'm not paid. I want to get paid, of course, but I need to make sure the team is paid. So all that to say, there's a lot in this world in this music world I don't know if people understand it. And I don't want to be a victim of like, it's so hard being indie, but we're looking for the money and we're looking for value. And I think that we're in a place now really restructuring and revaluing what artists are worth, even songwriters even too. So I don't know what I answered, but I'm grateful to have been signed and to not been signed, but could I tell you that I don't want to sign again? I couldn't. I mean, if there's like a cool boutique label who's like, we want to sign you, I'm like, maybe, let's go. That sounds cool.
You were on a certain trajectory as an indie from the get-go, and then getting signed, and then it plateauing. What do you think that was?
I wonder, it's quite weird to think about how much control a corporation has over your songs. I love Spotify. Spotify paid for my food and my rent, right, in the beginning. I'm not saying like I signed and all of a sudden like Spotify was like, oh no, she's signed now. Like, I don't know how that works because I know like Ultra like pitched the playlist too. So I don't know I have no idea. Could I say like, did Ultra try hard enough? Did they pitch me hard enough? Were they like batting for me hard enough? Or was my music different now? Like, did it just hit differently because now I know more about music and I'm thinking too much so these songs aren't as pure or interesting, or, like the timing is insane. It's almost like you don't know what a hit song is. Everyone's always like, this is it. This is it. And then it's not it at all. And then this song that you're like, I guess let's release this one. And then it's like popping off and you're like, I don't know what people want, Ken.
Oh.
I don't know. It's to be an artist is to literally be a gambler. Like, to be an artist is to be like, let's go. Like, all I know is I've been doing this for 7 years. It's not going to work if you don't like yourself at the end of the day. And I will say I didn't like myself for a hot minute back then. And I was trying to be more this or that to appease maybe, or I don't know. The songs that you can hear under Ultra are specific. They're a specific sound, and I'm proud of them because I wrote them all. But the sonics, maybe not me, maybe not the most me. And so when I released my last EP, Crybaby, I'm like, this is cool. This feels like me. And it's not even close to like what I'm doing now with my album. And I'm just like, I'm good. Let's release it and let's move forward.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm proud of it all. But like, I'm way more excited about this stuff now because I keep growing up. I keep changing. I'm so different than I am last year. Like, even how I am and who I like and how I operate and what I find important. And it's just like, you just become more you. And then you just keep writing about being you. And you're like, what a fun job.
But it sounds like you and I share something, which is this idea of making it is heavily dependent on money, right?
Yep.
Am I off, or am I kind of like in the ballpark?
No, I love it. I can talk about that. Yeah.
All right. So what is your mark of making it? Because you've already been signed. You've already, quote unquote, made a bunch of money, in the early years. But now what's your mark? Is it tiny? What is it that NPR Tiny Desk? Is it that? Is it that? Is it Coachella? What is it that is the next mark? Or today, what is your mark of making it?
Yeah,
again?
I like that question. It's triggering, Ken, but I like that question. So,
look, the reason I ask is because I want to know these things for myself. I mean, first and foremost, I'm deathly interested in these stuff because it affects the way I view the world, and I want to hear about it.
Yeah, I think that I've learned deeply in my soul that success is not money. I know that. It's hard to go away from that. I think for me, it's been money is success, and like physical touch and intimacy is love. Like, that's like how I like relate things. And I'm like, these are not true. And so for me, on the former side, I think that the blanket consistent statement is like, making it is able to do music as your full-time job. I have a lot of very talented and successful, to me, friends who do music, but who also work at restaurants and coffee shops and work for their family. And I'm like, that's commendable and awesome. And I'm a bit stubborn. And I'm like, I will not work at a bar. Like, I just get so like, I think I used to be very too prideful and very like, no. And I've had moments where I was like, I guess I'm going to work at a coffee shop, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think for me, as I've been able to see my life and my journey, making it was signing to a label, and I did. Making it was like getting a business manager. Making it was playing a headline show, which was really cool. And so I'm like, cool, if I look back at my life, I keep making it. And so now what does it look like? And it really does have to do with like the wellness of my soul. And a big part of that, right, is being able to afford therapy and like your rents. So like money is a tool, but it's also very necessary. And so for me today, making it feels like, I think that I feel like when people kind of, the belief that people have in me goes a long way. And I think for someone to want to manage me, I had a manager, and I kind of stopped having a manager, and I was managerless for like 3 months, and I have a new one now. And for someone to walk into my life and be like, I've seen your journey, and we got to go places. Like, there's no way you shouldn't be doing these things. And I'm like, okay, interesting. And then to have this like beautiful angel investor be like, I haven't heard of you, but like he bought my NFT, and he was just like, I looked at your catalog and I just like love your stuff. And he's like, how can I help your career? So I think making it is like living out transparently, like with your heart on your freaking sleeve, and being so blatantly like open. Like, I think making it is just like, hey, this is hard, but like, I think it's worth it. I think for me, making it is knowing that like, I'm not going to wake up at the end of my life being like, I really should have done this. I really should have done this better. I really should have done it all. Like, I'm like, I can't. And I'm also in my mid 30s. So I'm like, I can't go back like this. I have to do this. Like, we're only doing this. I can't, like, what am I going to, no. So making it is, I think, accepting the invitation to be a storyteller. And like, that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I want to do it through music and film and TV. But like, what making it to me is like, stop being so dramatic about quitting. So I don't say that anymore, because that's stupid. And my manager's like, you're not saying that anymore. And I'm like, making it is just knowing who I am. And so like, that's the wholeness part. Like, making it is knowing who you are. And like I said earlier, is like making it is liking who you are at the end of the day. And just being like, wow, that was good. A friend of mine in the music industry, he's like, congrats on the EP. How's it doing? And I was like annoyed by that. And I was like, well, I'm doing good. Like, how is it doing? Do you want me to give you a data analysis of the numbers? Because they're not good. Like, I used to have like millions of monthly listeners, and I don't anymore. And that's sort of okay. And I'm all right with that. Like, is that making it to like the world? Probably not. I think asking the question of like who you're making it for is like really important too. And I know they're kind of, I'm like, my thoughts are everywhere now, but like, I love this question because I'm answering it live to you, because I'm like, making it would also be me being able to buy my mom a Tesla and like having a house in Los Angeles. Like, I plan on doing that, and I'm going to do that. Making it is that, but that is not where I lay my life on, because that's easy. I think what's hard is like really liking yourself and loving yourself and doing the work that you're called to do. Like, that's just the hardest thing to do.
What exactly does a music manager do for an artist?
Great question. I think that there's a lot of levels. I think this is not mine, but a lot of managers are babysitters, because a lot of musicians don't do emails and don't follow up. And I'm a weirdo. I'm like, I love an email. I love a Google Calendar. Like, I'm very organized. So like, a lot of managers are babysitters, especially for younger artists, because they're just trying to like, I want to make my art, you know? But at the same time, I think for me, what a music manager is now is someone who has vision with me. What I know for sure is that a music manager should not care more about your career than you do, right? So a music manager, I think, keeps you accountable to the things you say yes to and the things you say no to. So, it's like, I think, yeah, maybe you should work with this person, or like, I don't know, they're like a filter, a funnel, a soundboard for me anyways. Ideally, a music manager is always thinking about the relationships that I could be making, whether it's brand partnerships or collaborations. Ideally, music managers are connected and have a black book of people, like, hey, this person's in the studio, you should hop in, or hey, this person's at this like event, like someone who is a bit sociable and socially inclined towards the relationships that I want to make. A music manager is also someone who listens to the music and doesn't need to know music things, but like most of my managers have been like, this is good. Like they're not like these, like they're not like, yes, this is the one, but like they're just people who I would hope keep pointing you back to like your goal, And so yeah, I think my manager, we just started together. Obviously we're very close friends, so it'll be like a fun journey. But like, yeah, music managers sits with you and looks at your quarterly goals too. And so for me, how I've operated is by goals, like quarterly goals. So I have a 12-month goal. And she was like, what do you want in your 12 months? And I was like, I'd love to tour. I would love to do some big brand partnerships. I might want to dabble in DJing. That sounds interesting. And I kind of went all the other way. I'm like, I want a book deal and I want to get my pilot sold. And she's like, okay, I got it. Yeah. So she like sees like who I am as a whole. And she's kind of just like that person that like really is thinking ahead of me when I can't. And someone who's like, I'm like, I gotta go in the studio. I can't make this phone call. And they're like, you should be in the studio. Like someone who's like, go to the studio.
Have you been to Vietnam?
It was really cool. It was cool to see my mom show me around. Wow. And I got to watch her perform in Da Nang. And so we flew. You've been? You're born?
No, I was born here in this US, but I go back 2-3 times a year.
Okay, so you know it. Great, love it. So I went to Da Nang, never been there, and I got to see my mom perform. And I remember sitting as like an audience member, and like I heard the people talk about her, and they're like, she hasn't been back since like the war, and like blah. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. Like I just like left backstage, like just she and I just drinking cognac and be like, break a leg, mom. It was just very like, and I wasn't doing music yet, so I was very just like, I'm an audience member, I'm a daughter, I'm an appreciator, and so it was like nice to have that lens and see Vietnam through her eyes. And we went to where she grew up, and I got to see like truly my mom grew up so poor. Obviously, it's probably not shock, like it's just a poor country in general, and like the way that she grew up. She had like her parents, like her dad was my grandpa. I never met him, but he was like a judge. So like, he did well, but they had like 10 kids. And she literally lived in like a treehouse. And so I look at her upbringing and I realized the importance of like, okay, she always just had a nice car because that was important for her, here. And so now I have to have a nice car because I'm like, it means something. It means safety. It means security. It means like we are not who we used to be. My mom did a lot to make sure I didn't have to live in a treehouse, And so it gave me a lot of insight on where she comes from and how she views money and wealth. And she still pays for people who take care of her parents' grave. She still sends money to them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh gosh, this is a different ecosystem of living. And it really does do something to the way I live and how I see my life and how I want to live and give. And I can do a better job at it, but I have that backing. And so, yeah, visiting was beautiful. And on a very like surface level, it's so beautiful there. The food is insanely delicious. We played tennis. We went on like boat rides and ate the best fruit and lived like king and queens. Like it was just so fun. And people didn't know I was Vietnamese because I'm a giant there. I literally felt like a giant there. I was just I'm like tall-ish for like an Asian girl, and my mom is too. And so we were both just like these two sore thumbs, just walking around getting charged extra at like temple tours. They're like, you're Chinese. And we're like, no, we're Vietnamese. So it was really fun and funny.
Do you follow other Vietnamese artists sort of in your space?
I like don't. Like who are, I mean, like I see the names. I will say that the music isn't like, it's not like my music. Like I like the type of music that I hear on like these like not even like these Vietnamese playlists, but like I think like these Asian centered playlists. Like I respect people and what they're doing and stuff, but like I think Asian is different than Vietnamese, right? So I don't really know many Vietnamese artists, and if I've come by them, I'm kind of like, cool, not my jam, but like respect. And I love that we're all doing our own thing. There's a lot of rapping and a lot of like hip hoppy, and I'm like, I love that stuff, and a lot of intense like dance Vietnamese artists. I'm definitely open for them. Like, is Hannah Vu Vietnamese?
She's Vietnamese.
I love Hannah Vu. Like that's like a one person I'm like, ooh, like that's sick, you know. But like I do listen to Asian artists.
Yeah, she just played like a month ago in DTLA in the Arts District.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Then there's Tao from the Get Down.
I mean, I love Tao. Yeah. Love Tao. Yes. Yeah, I think like there are like a handful.
That's who I'm talking. Like, that's the sort of the young artist Vietnamese musicians. Keshi is Vietnamese.
I didn't know that.
I know.
Okay.
A lot of people like I didn't know that either. Just somebody brought that up.
That's wild. Okay, cute. I'm like, how do we get all of our Vietnamese people together?
There are I don't know. I could be so wrong here. Okay. I'm just going to say it. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of Vietnamese Americans in the film business, TV, film, right? Production. There's directors, there's writers, there's producers. That's a long history of Vietnamese Americans in film, starting with, in my opinion, from Tony and Tim Bui. From 3 seasons. That's when I got involved because I went to USC at that time and started participating with those guys. And there's a sort of lineage of a lot of people in that. But I don't have a real grip on Vietnamese musicians. And I don't know why. The music business is, it's new to me in terms of Vietnamese Americans in the mainstream, and I want to know more. I want to get to know more. I'm putting it out there right now to the universe.
Yeah,
I would love to get these people on the show. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that reminds me a lot about like 88 Rising, what they're doing, and how I feel left out because I'm not that person. You know, like I'm like, even as a Vietnamese, I'm like, I know I'm not Japanese or Korean, you know, but I'm like, I'm cool, you know, so it's like, it is tough. It feels like I'm still trying to excavate that. And I definitely want to be
I could totally hear you at 88 Rising. I've been twice and I could totally.
I mean, I'd love to be there and I don't feel I don't know. We'll see. Like, we have some goals, but I'm just like, what's happening? Like, why? Yeah. So there's a lot of potential, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of room left. A lot. There's just so much.
Yeah, there is room. There is room. Yeah, space
for everybody to eventually just kind of like just fill up the space. But I mean, you're like one of the people out of like a handful of Keshi, Hannah Vu, Tao, Thuy, Trace. Dolly Ave is a new person that's coming on the scene. Okay. Young artist. Yeah.
Cool.
So there's like, I don't know, 6 or 7 people that I know of. I mean, but in the film space, there's a lot of support and a big community. Yeah. And I wonder why that is,
Yeah. I mean, I will also say too, though, like, perhaps this is interesting, but like, I think the Vietnamese language is so poetic. So I think there's a lot of writers. I mean, like Ocean's a good example, but like the writing, like reading Ocean's work pushed me to be like, oh, it's cool that I know Vietnamese. And that's really great. And I'm like, wow, I can really see language differently now. And it really has informed my writing now. Just like what words mean and stuff. So maybe just even the writing sense, it feels like just more accessible, but like, yeah, I don't know. I think music's also just very weirdly hard and specific and fickle.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard. And I think in film, there's more of a team dynamic. Like you need each other,
Yeah.
You look for each other to work with each other, there's that. But in music, you're right. It's just like, it could be just you and a guitar, you and a piano, or you just they're singing. And that is just a different game.
I mean, you make a good point now because I'm thinking as I started doing writing, I actually I'm a part of a Vietnamese writing group.
What?
Like I was invited by my friend T Ho, and T I met through a friend, but T is a writer, like in the room kind of writer, like brilliant, and she's awesome. And our story kind of, without going too further into the story, but she basically wrote a story about her parents in a refugee camp. And in the story, my mom plays a part in it because it's like there's like a famous girl in a magazine and it's my mom. And so she found out who I was. And so we kind of talked about it. And I was like, oh, like that's my mom. I'm actually writing a story about my mom. And so she's like, oh, like talk to me more about it. So she invited me into this like writers group. And so it was really cool sharing my pilot to like a screen of like 7 Vietnamese people and be like, this is my pilot. And they gave me thoughts and it was cool.
And this is a Vietnamese just writing group, or is it Vietnamese film writing or screenwriting group?
Screenwriting group.
Okay, we talk off screen about that.
So I was plugged in so quickly, like you were saying to your point, so quickly into a film world so quickly. Because I'm like, oh, it's there's an entity, there's a group, and it's like they're doing things, you know.
They're so plugged in, you know.
Yeah.
I think that they exist. The film community, the Vietnamese film community exists on the furthest mainstream, like closest to the mainstream that you can get. I think in my brain in the entertainment space.
Yeah.
You know, music is far and few between. It's maybe because I just don't know enough about it. You know, and I'm putting it out there in the universe. I want to know more. I want to meet more. You have your Teresa Mize, who she just won the Grammy this year, Sangeeta.
Right.
Yeah. She just won the Grammy, and now we have Mike Van over at Billboard. But you know, that groundswell needs to appear. Yeah.
I think so too. And I'm encouraged by that. Like I'm encouraged by it because like you're saying too, it's like there is room. And I'm really over the scarcity mindset. You know, when you see someone like for me, it's like, I will be very honest. Like I know that she's not Vietnamese, but oh my gosh, what's her name? Crying in H Mart. Japanese breakfast.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, she wrote a book. Oh, she got it. You know, it's going to be made in an A24 thing. And I'm like, no, like I want a book. And I'm like, Trace, you're good. Like there's room, you know, it's just like, it just makes you feel like it's good. At the end of the day, you're like, okay, people are wanting this. It's not far. And just feeling very influenced and very encouraged by like seeing, like, especially even seeing Ocean do so well. I'm like, oh, it makes me so encouraged to feel like he's like, I'm a year older than him, but I'm like, oh my gosh, we're like queer and Asian. It's like, we should be best friends. Like, what are we doing? How do we work together? Let's go. It's going to happen. Whatever.
Well, Trace, thank you so much today. You know, it was a pleasure running into you at the Silver Lake Reservoir. And, you know, that's why we're here today. Hopefully today is the first of many that we will see you part of.
Yeah, thank you. And I love what you're doing. And I really appreciate what you're doing. And it's not easy, but I'm sure it's life-giving and it's really cool to be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Vietnamese with Kenneth Nguyen. The Vietnamese is produced by Brittany Tran. Special thanks to Jane Nguyen, Catherine Nguyen, Tina Pham, Sydney Jamie, and Christo Trin. Please find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at The Vietnamese Podcast. You can also find us on YouTube, where you can subscribe, like, and comment. Please rate and give us a review wherever you find our podcasts. Thanks again for listening.